A car driving down the road, a cop stops it without reasonable suspicion and then decides to check their trunk without probable cause and finds a body in it. None of the exceptions apply. Does the killer just goes free?
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
There have been a couple cases over the years that have given me nightmares.
Did you feel pressure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every day.
Is 3 years of law school too long? Be honest. Hello everyone, welcome back to Eddie Style channel, where we do everything Eddie Style. My name is Eddie Winner. Welcome to another episode of Interviewing the Law. My guest today is the Director of Criminal Law and Procedure here at the University of Illinois College of Law and one of the most recognized scholars in this field. From serving as Editor-in-Chief of the Virginia Law Review to clerking for a U.S. Supreme Court Justice to having an incredible career in private practice. His path ultimately led him to his true passion, teaching law. Over the past 32 years, his exceptional teaching has earned him an astounding 28 awards from what I counted, and he remains deeply admired by his students. Today, we'll delve into his remarkable career, his influential scholarship, and his perspective on the evolution of criminal law. Professor Leipold, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
So, we have a little bit of a tradition on this show. Every guest gets his favorite drink. So, you ordered a Diet Coke, from what I remember.
Just right.
And let's be honest, this is the real reason why you are here today.
True.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So I would like to start by jumping straight into the point.
Okay.
You are one of the most loved and recognized professors here at the College of Law. Every student that I talked to said that you deeply influenced them, every former student. I would like to start by reading a few testimonies from your prior students, okay? So, this is a student from 2 decades ago. In every class, almost always, I sat in the back row. Purposefully, interacting with my professors felt like a foreign language, but Professor Leipold changed that for me. He's engaging, he's patient, and he's very thoughtful with his presence. His warmth and humor make students feel at ease. He encourages students to participate meaningfully rather than challenging them to solve Socratic riddles. This is just one of them. Let me read you another one. Where do I even begin with the man, the myth, the legend? It's impossible to sing his praises enough. I'll do my best here. First, his exams are notoriously difficult. Most of us leave the test thinking we failed. But contrary to what you might think or might expect, everyone loves him anyways. That should say volumes about the kind of person he is. Even better than his lectures, which are incredibly good, he's kind, he's calm, and generous with his time. Our friend group calls him Uncle Leipold in our chats because that's very much the vibe that he gives. And I have more and more and more. What's your secret?
There's no secret to
There
this.
is no secret?
No. I've been lucky is part of it. Over the years, I've had a chance to work with some really, really talented people. That's the biggest part of what we enjoy about teaching. The chance to work with people who care about what they're doing, who are mature enough to understand that some of the things that are less fun, like a lot of reading, like being called on in class, is part of it, that there's a value to it. And the students that I've had over the years have unfailingly come to class with the right attitude, the right mindset for doing serious work. If you don't enjoy that as a teacher, you shouldn't be doing this because that's as good as it gets. So I am lucky to have had great people to work with in the classroom, and I just try not to forget how lucky I am to be doing what I'm doing. But part of, I think, what maybe resonates with students is I spend a lot of time thinking about when I was a student. What things did I like? What things did I not like? What things irritated me about professors? And what things made me feel engaged and interested in the subject matter. I won't say I always do it, but I always try to do it. I try to remember the things that got in the way of me getting something out of class, and I just try to duplicate that now. And if that's worked, then I'm happy.
What are some of the things that irritated you when you were a law student?
Irritated, maybe a little strong. I'm not good at remembering case names. And so it always annoyed me when professors would just refer to everything by case names as if I remembered all the cases we'd talked about the last 5 weeks.
Right.
I couldn't keep up. I couldn't sort of recall it that quickly. And so I don't always succeed, but I try not to do that in class. When I mention a case, unless it's one that's people really should know by now, I try to remind them what that case is about, because I needed that help, and so I like to assume that other people need that help too.
Do you have a mentor or somebody you look up to? Where did that teaching style come from?
I certainly had great teachers over the years, including in law school. My criminal law professor was probably the best teacher I'd ever seen. He did things differently than I do. He was a commanding, intimidating almost presence in the classroom, and by golly, you prepared because you didn't want to be caught unprepared. I don't think of myself as very intimidating. I couldn't pull that off. And so, to the extent the lectures or the questioning goes well in class, first of all, that's a tribute to the student's preparation, but it's also the only thing that I ever do that I think makes me that I know makes me better, and that's prepare. I spend a lot of time preparing for class, even now, even 32
Really?
years in. Oh yeah, I'm always nervous before class. I'm always trying
You are?
to. Oh yeah, I mean not as bad as it used to be,
But still.
but yeah, I still get this uneasy feeling because class time is such a limited resource, right? I mean, there's only so much time we have together in class, and if I don't prepare, and if I screw something up, then I'm wasting that. And you may not know this, but you guys are paying a lot of money to go to law school, and that's nice for us, for the faculty, obviously, but that means we have a responsibility to do our part to make sure you're getting value for it. And so I don't know that I'm much different in terms of presentation ability, being articulate. Certainly there are many of my colleagues who are smarter than I am, but I prepare because I know I can control that.
How do you deal with students that frequently come unprepared? I'm sure that you had a very long career. From time to time, you might have a student that you call on them and they don't care, they're unprepared.
Yeah.
How do you deal with students like that?
There are different ways, and part of teaching is to realize there are no rules of teaching. I mean, there are some things that better teachers do, but for me, I try never embarrass a student, never call them out in front of their peers, never make a joke at their expense. I've violated that more than once. Always regretted it afterwards, but don't make it hard for them tomorrow. if I think a student is not preparing routinely, I mean, we all have days, right, where stuff happens, you're not as prepared as you should be. But if it happens more than once, then I might talk to them, but always outside the classroom. Because the goal is not to embarrass anyone. The goal is to get them to prepare. And for me, I think it works better to talk to them than to make it clear to everyone in the room how unprepared they are. But fear is a great motivator too, and so I'm not saying that people who are harder on unprepared students, I'm not being critical of that. That works for some people. I just don't think it would work for me.
Tell me how you use cold calls in a way to engage the class.
Yeah, that's evolved some over the years. I used to cold call everybody all the time. And of course, by cold call, it simply means calling on them in class without them knowing they're going to be called on until they hear their name.
Yeah.
I used to do that all the time for everyone. Over the years, I still do that with first-year law students. For upper-level students, I've changed my approach a little bit because I'm lucky enough to teach really popular classes, criminal procedure.
Yes.
Right? Who doesn't
Yes.
like criminal procedure?
I mean, everybody takes this class.
Right. I mean,
Everybody
there's a reason
It's hard to take it.
TV shows are all about criminal procedure, so of course people want to know about this. And so they tend to be very large classes, and so cold calling on people almost feels random because I can't call on, 10 people a day. The quality control of the comments is harder to maintain. Some people will be ready, some people not. I don't want to embarrass people, and so I don't want to just call on you, and if you're not ready like that, move on to someone else, because then you're a little bit embarrassed, and that's not good. So over the last few years, probably since COVID actually, when everything changed, I try to give students 24 hours notice and ask them, would you mind if I called on you tomorrow for this material? That leads to better comments, better quality of participation, because I think people prepare with an eye toward being called on. And then there's no embarrassment, and it keeps the class moving better. 1Ls, I feel much more that there is a value to learning to speak extemporaneously when you're not prepared, and to be able to call on pieces of the case. First semester students, I still ask them to recite the facts of the case, because at that point they're learning to read cases.
Yes.
You sat in on a second semester first year class.
Yes.
And so I'm less concerned about them learning to read a case, because they know how to read cases by now. Now I'm more interested in what they can extract from the case. And so I'm much more likely to ask them to take a position and argue a side. That's really hard for first semester people, because they're still learning the game.
Here at the University of Illinois, we do have a global name, so we have a lot of international students.
Yep.
I'm an international student. Sometimes I can't understand some international students. I can't understand their accents. And sometimes when they ask questions in class, I wonder how the professor understands them, because it seems that me and my peers just can't. When you have a situation like that, how do you deal with that?
I just try to be honest with them. I just say, I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your question. And if it goes on too long, I mean, if the exchange goes on too long, I don't mean the question, then I just invite them to come talk to me after class. That way we can have a sit down. It will be easier for me to hear them, because as you know, some of these big classrooms, it's awfully hard to hear whether English is your first language or not. And so I just have to be, I can't pretend that I understood it and answer something else. So
I thought that's what professors usually do. But
If
maybe not.
if I don't answer a question, it's because I'm genuinely clueless, not fake clueless.
They say that criminal law is, and law in general, is slow to change. You've been teaching for so many years. You don't seem bored to me. Teaching the same materials, more or less. How do you keep it interesting for yourself?
It's, well, criminal procedure in particular changes more than some other areas of the law, more than property law, for example. And so I'm constantly trying to get caught up with what's going on in the various areas of criminal procedure. Criminal law, a little bit less so. And for criminal law, the challenge is not to get increasingly interested in deep, deep subjects. Because while that keeps it interesting for me, that's not, the students are always hearing this information for the first time, even though it's the 30th time I've taught it. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but mostly I've never given a perfect lecture. I've never had the perfect class, which means I've always done something that I can do better next time. I'm not sure I've ever fixed all the errors I make during class, ever, but that helps keep it interesting as well, just knowing that there's a better way to do it, sometimes.
But do you sometimes tell yourself, you know, you're preparing for class, you're like, again this case, again this procedure, like I'm bored of that. It's like,
Maybe a little bit sometimes, because there are topics that are important to cover that I don't find especially interesting, but you know, they're foundational, and so yeah, I'm not always interested in that. The bigger challenge is when I teach something that I know didn't go well the last time I taught it, and I can't figure out why I can't get this right. So every year I'll teach certain topics. Every year I know I'm going to get questions either during office hours or at exam time. I still haven't explained it in a way that makes it much easier. So when I teach the perfect class, maybe I'll get bored, but I'm not too worried about it.
well, students disagree with you on the perfect lecture side and perfect classes, as you may know. And I always see after your class, like a dozen of students gather around you and just talk to you for, it seems like a lengthy amount of time.
Which is not only fine, but it's great. Because I know, because I remember from being a student, there are some people who don't want to put their hand up in class and ask questions, but they don't mind talking one-on-one or, you know, in a smaller group afterwards. I want to encourage that. I mean, I want people to feel comfortable asking what's on their mind, floating what may be a crazy idea. That's part of it. That's part of learning to fashion your thinking in a way that we hope will make them better problem solvers when they're lawyers.
Yeah. I would like to take a step back now and talk to you a little bit about your background.
Okay?
You grew up in Maine.
Yep.
How was your childhood like?
It was wonderful. I have the best parents ever. They're both still living, both still healthy, still in Maine. Maine was a wonderful place to have a childhood. You know, I had brothers and friends and, you know, the normal sort of awkwardness of the teen years and so on. But I met my wife in Maine, and now we've been married for quite some time.
Yeah.
42 years.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, it was wonderful.
You attended Boston University.
I did.
Studied public relations.
I did.
How was that?
It was good. The best part of it was I learned to write fast. And there's a premium because you take journalism and marketing and lots of writing classes, and learning to write, just practicing writing so that writing becomes comfortable for you was important. It became obvious to me my junior year that this was not the career path for me. It required a level of creativity that I knew I didn't have.
Public relations?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I thought, I don't want to do this and be not very good at it. I want to find something that is a little more intellectually engaging. And so I started thinking about law, but I didn't seriously think about it until I was a junior in college. So I just sort of stumble into things. I don't have any plan.
So when you were a junior in undergrad, you decided to go to law school?
Well, like a lot of people, I think, I was unsure. I said, I'll take the LSAT, the LSAT, the entrance exam-ish thing.
Yes.
And if I do well, maybe I'll go to law school, see what happens next. And I did pretty well, and so I decided to go to law school. But I was so clueless. I didn't know what lawyers did. Don't have any lawyers in my family. I just said, well, seems kind of interesting. I'll try that.
It's interesting how many people follow that path, including myself.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, when you think about how easy it would be to go a different direction, you could have gone a different direction so easily, and you just kind of wandered into the law.
Yeah.
At least I did. Yeah.
But I feel like honestly, it's the best degree outside of, STEM.
Absolutely.
If you're not a STEM person, I'm not a STEM person, then law school just teaches you philosophy, law, how to speak, how to think, how to write.
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yep.
And then you can go to any direction.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
how did you choose your law school?
I did well enough on the LSAT that I was told you don't have to apply to, 40 law schools. And just to both date myself and embarrass myself, it was a time when you did all these applications by hand and mailed them and wrote a check for each one, and that was getting to be real money. So I only ended up applying to 5 or 6 law schools. And, like a lot of people, I was waitlisted at Yale, and I got into the University of Virginia, and I asked my advisor, and I got into a couple of other schools that were not as highly ranked. And my advisor said, go to Virginia. And I said, okay. So that was that.
Your advisor in undergrad?
Yeah.
Well, your advisor in undergrad, did he advise you to spend 3 summers interning for soap mills? Let's talk about that, because that's an interesting story. In undergrad, you interned for 3 summers in a soap mill factory. Why did you do that, and how did you get to do that?
How did I get to do that?
Yes.
It was actually a woolen mill.
A woolen mill.
Right. It produced wool materials, wool blankets, bolts of cloth, things like that. But I ran a machine one summer that squeezed soap while they were being laundered out of it. So honestly, I did it because it paid better than most minimum wage jobs. It got me plenty of hours, it let me live at home. And since I knew I wasn't going to be pursuing public relations, I didn't feel any need to extern or anything like that. But it turned out it was real work. I mean, it was manual labor and then some. So it didn't hurt me any, I guess.
Did you enjoy it?
Not a bit.
Not a bit?
No, it was hard, dirty, hot work. There's no air conditioning in the factory, and this was all during the summer. Now, summers in Maine are better than summers in Texas, but it was hot enough. But it was good for me, right? It was I got a chance to do something manual.
Yeah.
and you know, I got a chance to interact with people, many of whom I liked very much, who I wouldn't otherwise have worked with, right? When you're a lawyer, you don't work for the same slice of people that work in woolen mills, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I had that chance.
Yes.
In retrospect.
In retrospect.
Yeah.
It is fascinating to recognize that, you know, people don't get to do manual work anymore or as much just because we have computers. Everything is just digital. Even if you work, you just type on a keyboard. You don't do anything with your hands.
Right. Right.
So I'm glad you had that experience. And then you went to law school,
Yep.
and you served as the editor-in-chief of the Law Review.
Yep.
How did you get to work on that, and did you enjoy that?
I did. It was probably somewhat different than than I think it is now, at least at Illinois. If you got good enough grades, you graded on to the law review. So I graded on in my second year, and then you know, like most schools, there were elections for the managing board, and I was elected the editor-in-chief, and that was a good, it was hard work, but it was a good part of law school because it gave me a chance to work with really smart, right, the other managing board members to do something real. I mean, we were putting out a journal, we were editing articles, we were selecting legal scholarship that would, we arrogantly thought, have the benefit of the University of Virginia Law Review byline. So, yeah, it was good. I worked with some really great people, very, really impressive classmates.
So I hear that you had high grades, and also you told me that you received a high grade on the LSAT. You were waitlisted at Yale. Do you enjoy the process of learning?
Of learning?
Yes.
Yeah. Of taking exams and tests? Not a bit.
Yeah.
Law school would have been a blast if it weren't for those exams. But I found exams very stressful, but I guess everybody does. So no, but learning is fun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things that are interesting, especially the first contact with it, where you know nothing, and then you can learn this much in a very short period of time. And that's what college does for people. That's what graduate school does for people, especially law school. Because people don't come into law school having to know anything about the law. So every single class I took in law school was brand new to the likes of me. And yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I love law school, to be honest.
Yeah.
Law school, I recommend to everybody, go to law school. You won't waste your time. And then after you graduated, you clerked for Judge Abner Mikva. In Washington, D.C.
I did.
He's one of the only people who served on the 3 branches of federal government.
He had a pretty good looking resume.
Yes.
He was an impressive guy and may well still be familiar to perhaps an older generation of people in Illinois, because he was a congressman.
The second district
from Illinois,
House of
yeah.
Representative.
Yeah, and so he was a member of Congress. He was in the House for 10 years. He was an Illinois legislator, and so yeah, and then you know he became a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Later, he would go on to become White House counsel.
Yeah, under Clinton.
Yeah, so he did pretty well. He got a lot done in his career. I was pretty fortunate to have a chance to walk in his shadow for a while.
So you moved to Washington, D.C.
I did. We did. I was married then. Yeah, we did.
Okay, you and your wife moved to Washington, D.C.
Yep.
The capital.
Yep.
How did it feel like? You graduated, you're a young attorney,
yeah.
and okay, no more school, no more like law review and all these stuff. This is the real world. This is the capital, and you clerk for such a distinguished judge. Like, How did it feel like?
It was intimidating. I felt like, I'm guessing a lot of people in that situation feel, which is, am I in over my head here? And maybe I was, but it was exciting. I mean, it was, you work on a case and the next day you see it in the Washington Post. I had underappreciated exactly what law clerks do. I thought it was more, I didn't appreciate how much you had to be a real lawyer. You had to really understand the law, research the law, be able to write the law, be able to draft opinions and things. I mean, it's always the judge's decision, but I was a bit in awe and a little bit nervous about how significant a law clerk's role can be to making things work. So it was unsettling.
Was it overwhelming?
There were times when I thought, oh boy, I don't know how I'm going to get everything done and give it the kind of attention and turn out the kind of quality work that I hope to be able to produce. Yeah, there were times when I felt like, there's only 24 hours in a day and I best make use of most of them. So, yeah.
Well, after you clerked for him, you had a slightly more overwhelming experience.
Yeah.
Because you attained the highest achievement that a new attorney could achieve. You clerked for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Powell.
Yep.
And not only that, but that was at the last year of his career on the court.
Yeah.
Why did you apply, and how did you feel when you got the letter telling you that you got the role?
I applied because people at the University of Virginia who were on the managing board of Law Review frequently applied, so I was just sort of doing what other people did. I didn't have any preconceived understandings about the clerkship path. So I applied, and I applied to everyone, all 9. Several of them rejected me probably by return mail. I mean, it was pretty quick that I didn't get some. And then I had the chance to interview with Justice Powell, and when I found out that he had selected me, I first thought that's got to be a mistake, because I knew some of the other people that he had interviewed. But as usual, I thought, well, I'll take it whether I deserve it or not, and it was great. It was the best. I can't imagine having had a better year or working for a better person than Lewis Powell. It was terrific.
Tell me more about it. Can you tell us about kind of like the inner workings? How much can you share with us?
It was wonderful. I mean, we would work in very small very small chambers. Mm-hmm. So there was the justice, a couple of secretaries, and the 4 law clerks. And so I was one of 4 that term. And we would divide up the cases that the Supreme Court was hearing. We'd read all the briefs from our quarter of the cases, prepare a memo for the boss, summarizing the arguments, summarizing the issues. If there was an issue that Justice Powell was interested in that wasn't covered in the briefs, we'd sometimes do more research on that. So he might say, tell me more about this small issue here. The parties don't treat it as being particularly significant, but I'd like to know more about it. So we'd do that, and then we would prepare. We would typically go in before oral argument and talk to the justice, and he'd just sort of talk through out loud. He'd have read all the stuff, and he'd say, well, I'm thinking about this, but I still want to know more about this from oral argument, and we'll see just sort of getting his head into the individual cases, because of course he had 4 times the number that any of us had. Then they'd hear oral argument, they'd go to conference, he'd come back to chambers, and we'd wait to hear. Typically, it was, at the time, Chief Justice Rehnquist, if he was in the majority, would assign opinions. If the chief wasn't in the majority, then the senior justice, who was Justice Brennan at the time, would assign opinions. And Justice Powell always wanted as many opinions as possible. He loved to get opinions to write. And so we'd get assigned some number of opinions, and if it was my case at the preparation stage, presumptively I would write a draft of the opinion for Justice Powell if he had been assigned to write for the majority. So it would go back and forth. Justice Powell would read the draft opinion that I'd prepared, which I'd always run through the other, at least one other law clerk for their wisdom. And then he'd say, we're saying too much in Part B. We need to beef up Part 3A. Don't say this because that's going to provoke Justice X to respond or something like that, and we don't need to address. So he'd sort of fashion the opinion, and I'd go back and do it again, making the changes, and so on. Then we'd circulate it to the full court. Justice Powell would circulate the opinion to the full court, and then we'd wait for the votes to come in. So I'd draft an opinion in Smith versus Jones. Justice Powell would eventually sign off on it. We'd circulate it to the court, and then you start counting. Okay, someone would send in a memo from Justice O'Connor would say, I'm joining your opinion, Lewis. And then we'd get a vote from Justice White, and then we'd get a vote from Justice Rehnquist. And then we'd get a memo that says, from Justice Marshall saying, I'm going to be dissenting in this case. Okay, so we got 4. We got 1 dissent. Probably Brennan is going to join Marshall, so now we're at 4-2. Who are we most likely to get to 5 and a majority? And then Justice Scalia would send around something saying, I really like your opinion, but if you could see your way clear to change this part, then I'd be grateful. So he didn't quite say, I will join your opinion if you make this change. So then you have to sit and think a little bit.
Negotiation.
Well, not everything was in writing. I mean, everything. And so it wasn't, sort of arm twisting or, going and talking. And so I'd go to Justice Powell, and he'd say, where are we on this opinion? And I'd say, we got 4. Justice Scalia says if you do this, he might join. I would say, where's Harry Blackman on this? Because if you could get the 5th vote from Blackman, and if all this is hypothetical, I don't have any particular opinion in mind, then we don't need to make the change that Justice Scalia wanted to make if Justice Powell didn't want to. I mean, he didn't think that that was a good change to the opinion. So it would go on like that, and eventually you'd get typically your 5 votes, and maybe then when Justice Marshall would circulate his dissent, we might respond to the dissent, and then we'd circulate it again, and then people would join again or not join the opinion again, and so on. It was fascinating.
It sounds really exciting.
It could be, yes.
And I know that serving as the editor-in-chief of the Law Review is a lot of responsibility, and then you kind of grew to be a clerk of a federal judge in Washington, but then you are part of the Magic 4 that actually you have access to a Supreme Court justice. Your writing, some of your writing will be part of the opinion. How, did you feel pressure?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every day. I mean, the stakes were high. You wanted to never embarrass your boss or yourself. And so, yeah, it was, but it was great. I mean, you knew that you were doing something that mattered. You knew or suspected that maybe you're in a little bit over your head here. But what it ultimately did for me was it taught me a couple of things. One is, in some sense, this is how the world works when it comes to government. I mean, members of Congress don't do all their own reading and writing. They delegate it to staff members and so on. And so, this is not, the Supreme Court justices, in my experience, were all hardworking, conscientious, smart, diligent. It was their opinions. This was not them just signing off.
Yeah.
And so there was an integrity to the process that I came to admire very much.
Was it pleasant to see some of the sentences you wrote in the official opinion?
Yeah, sure. It was a little bit of a charge.
Yeah.
But coupled with that was a nervousness that what if later case books and the scholars say, well, this was a pretty good opinion, but this stupid passage here.
Oh.
So I try not to get too full of myself about the fact that maybe I'm the one that typed the words onto the page.
Did it feel extra special because it was the last year of Justice Powell?
Well, in retrospect, we didn't know.
Okay.
He didn't announce his retirement until the next to the last day of the term. So we had no idea that we were his last active clerks. So, yeah, he just called us in the afternoon before the last day of the courts, that the court would be sitting to announce the final opinions of the term. And he just told us that, he was 79 and he wanted to retire while people were still sorry to see him go rather than when they couldn't wait to get rid of him.
After that experience, you went to private practice. You worked in Philadelphia.
I did.
You worked at Morgan, Lewis, and Bacchius. What kind of work did you do there?
Mostly civil litigation. The usual run of big law, civil litigation cases, insurance cases, environmental cleanup cases, contract cases, that sort of thing. That was the kind of standard fare for, big firm civil litigation practice.
Did you get to try cases?
No, not in the way that the stakes were way too big, right? I mean, clients were huge, cases were huge. I mean, I got to do pieces of cases, so I'd take some depositions and I'd draft pleadings and I'd do things like that, but only occasionally would appear in court, right? If you want in-court experience, that's not the fastest way to get there.
You have to go to small to mid-sized firms to get that.
But they are a great firm, and I had a great experience there. I worked with terrific people, really, really capable lawyers that taught me a lot about professionalism, how good lawyering is done. So it was hard work, but it was a good experience.
So you worked there for around 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And then you transitioned to the magic world of academia.
Yeah.
When did you first started thinking about wanting to be a professor?
I mean, when I was clerking, at the time, recent clerks were a good source for law schools to recruit. So I had a couple of sort of perfunctory interviews with a couple of law schools while I was clerking. But I knew I didn't want to, if I ever wanted to be an academic, I didn't want to be one then. I wanted to practice law. I wanted to learn what it was to be a lawyer. So I didn't think seriously about it until third or fourth year of practice when I thought, I'm enjoying this, I'm getting a lot out of it, but is this what I want to be doing 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now? And I thought being a professor was more likely to give me the kind of life and the kind of professional experiences that I would enjoy. And I was right.
Yeah, you were right, and I'm happy that you made that decision. I feel like many people get caught up in
Sure.
maybe the money side of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, you work at a big law firm, and you just can't refuse it. You know, you might be happier somewhere else, but it kind of sucks you in.
Yeah, but part of being happy for a lot of people is being able to provide for family comfortably, being able to take care of relatives. You know, I mean,
Yes.
So it's, I don't, you know, for a minute think that people who continue on with a big firm life, a lot of them like it a
Yes.
lot. Now, the money matters, but no, and so part of happiness is what you do day to day. Part of it is the comfort that you feel that you can provide in a manner that will keep you from worrying about, will my parents be able to get health care if they get sick? Will my kids have opportunities that I want them to have? So, yeah, I mean, the money gets a bad rap, but it's part of being content with the professional choices that you make.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Money is very important, and anybody that tells me otherwise is just disgenuine.
part of it also is, and I didn't appreciate this until I was actually at my old law firm. Big corporations, sure. I mean, if you think that the world is too skewed in the direction of those with power and money and so on, and you don't want to be helping in that direction, good, fine. You know, that's perfectly legitimate, admirable in many ways, but there's nothing wrong with representing corporations, right? If you,
Absolutely.
if they do something wrong and you can, you know, help them do less wrong things, if you can counsel them, if you can, you know, sort of make it for a better outcome, nothing wrong with that.
No, everybody deserves zealous advocacy.
Everyone deserves it, right?
So from all places. So you grew up on the East Coast.
Yep.
You spent most of your time on the East Coast and in Washington. And you came here, which is a great school, but it is very remote. It's lovely, but very remote. How did you decide to come to Urbana-Champaign?
I like to tell people there was something special about Illinois. They made me an offer when no one else did. And to be honest, that kind of did it for me.
Yeah.
They were the first one to make me an offer and pretty darn close to being the only one to make me an offer. I did a modest number of interviews, including some at, if I can say this, were terrible law schools.
You can say anything.
I mean, I won't mention names, but there were some schools that were not, do not have great, you know, reputations within the academy for high quality faculty and so on, and I couldn't get a sniff out of most of them. But Illinois, for whatever reason, treated me like I was real people and made me an offer. And I talked to my wife about it, and she didn't quite say, "Where's Illinois?" But I mean,
Close.
Yeah, I took out the map and said, "Well, here's Champaign," and she observed, because she's really smart, that this is quite a distance from the ocean, because we grew up about
Yeah.
10 or 12 miles from the ocean. And I said, yeah, it is. So, but she's a trooper. We and I had no other job offers. And so off we came, like most people, not most people, like some people. I thought, I'll be here a few years. I hope I'll do well enough to be tenured here, start my career here, and then if the opportunity presents itself, move back to the Northeast, because my whole family's there, her whole family was there, and, you know, that's just what people do. And now 32,
And you're still here.
32 years later, here we are, so.
But you were a visiting professor at Boston College and at Duke.
Yep.
And you also won a teaching award at Duke. So, but you still remained here. Why?
Part of this was part inertia, part lack of other opportunities. I mean, but there came a time when it appeared that there was a school that at least claimed that they were quite interested in me, a pretty good school, on par with Illinois, back in New England, and I assumed I'd take it if they offered it to me. And then one night we were actually looking at real estate online to figure out, okay, if we move there, what kind of house can we buy? How much would it cost? What kind of salary ask should I be making? And the more we talked, the more we realized we really like it here. And by then we had 2 kids, and the idea of upping and moving the kids when we thought this is a good place, good schools here, good resources here, good quality of life generally here, and we just decided, what are we doing? I mean, why would we want to leave here, especially with kids? And so it turned out the school was not interested in me, but we wouldn't have gone. I know this sounds like a after-the-fact rationalization, but I'm 99% sure we would not have accepted an offer even if the school had made us an offer, because we had decided we just like it here. It's a good quality of life, and that's important.
Was it hard to be away from your family for so long?
Of course. I mean, you know, I wish I had more time with my parents. I wish my kids knew their grandparents better. I mean, they know them, and we see them a couple of times a year. But sure, I mean, I wish there was a closer family, and that's on us because we're the ones that are out in God's country. But so yeah, I suppose regrets in that sense. But no, would we have done it different if we had to do over again? I don't think so.
I'm happy to hear that. Now let's talk a little bit about your scholarship.
Okay.
And I have a few books of yours right here. It's quite heavy. So, before we talk about some of this, why criminal law?
It's just interesting. The stakes are high. The issues are complex. The facts are interesting, perhaps perversely interesting, right? I mean, it's morbidly interesting.
Morbidly curious.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you sit down and I read a criminal case. I sit down, I read a breach of contract case. So, yeah. And I had been interested back when I was clerking. We would take turns. Well, the 4 clerks would have a draft each calendar session. So one month I'd have the first pick, then the second pick, then the third, right? And we'd go around and pick cases. And I liked the criminal cases. To me, they were the ones that engaged me. Fortunately, I had a co-clerk who loved the business and tax stuff. bless his pointy head. I was glad that good co-clerk to have. So I don't know. I just for things that sound so small, the stakes are so large, and I just find that interesting.
Some of the cases that you read is just, it's shocking.
It is.
It's you know, it's not a movie, it's not a TV show. These are real cases
Yeah.
with real people. How did that, or has it at all, affected your perspective on human nature?
I don't know if it's how much it's affected my outlook on human nature generally. I mean, maybe it confirms it as much as it changes it. I mean, there are people who do evil things, right? I mean, who do intentionally bad things to hurt people, and I don't, right? I don't understand that. I mean, I don't understand what drives that. I find it more helpful when I think about some of the evil in the world to feel like, okay, but I can do something. I can't change what they do, but if I can play a tiny part in making things a little more just, a little more fair, a little more thoughtful even, that seems like an okay way to spend my professional time. But no, I mean, there have been a couple cases over the years that have given me nightmares, but...
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like real nightmares?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
would you like to share what type of cases? Now I'm curious.
There was a case from many years ago. I didn't work on it. It was just one that was important to a case that I was working on. And not to dwell on this stuff, but it involved a guy who killed not a child, but a young adult.
Yeah.
Killed him, tortured him, recorded it, and sent the recording to the kid's parents. And the more I looked at that, the more that case bothered me a lot, and I ended up dreaming about it. So, yeah, there are some bad people who do some bad things. I mean, no one's always bad, just like no one's always good, but some people are bad enough.
Yes. There are some really bad people out there.
Indeed.
Professor Leipold,
Yeah.
what prompts one to write so much, and how do you even do that?
First of all, let me be clear here. These books,
Yes.
I am
You are
co-author on
right,
these.
co-author.
Right, and so I don't write that book any more than I write this book. I've reached a point, I've been doing these. This is a treatise on the federal rules of criminal procedure.
Yes.
And I've now been working on this for, over 20 years. And so although I'm still listed as a co-author, because the originator of these books, well, he passed a quarter century ago. So these are mine enough, even though I wasn't the original author on them. But it just, you get interested in things, you start working on things, and if you live long enough, you have time to get some stuff done, I guess.
Some stuff done, yeah. I barely carried it to the studio. You have a couple of interesting articles that I've read. Response for Paul Butler's jury nullification article in 1995, where he proposed that black jurors should acquit black defendants for nonviolent charges. Yep. You authored the response. So what prompted you to write that response?
Well, two things. One is the topic of jury nullification I find interesting. And that's when, of course, the jury acquits, even though they are persuaded that the defendant committed the crime charged. But for mercy, for we don't like the law, or we don't like the way the police acted, or for whatever reason, the jury acquits against the evidence. That's what nullification is. And so I had just written a modestly long piece on jury nullification that helped get me tenure.
Great.
So it was in my brain when Professor Butler, Paul, wrote an article that said, in his view, jurors should exercise this nullification power to acquit African American defendants who are charged with nonviolent crime, responding to the, fact that African Americans are disproportionately represented in the criminal justice system. So he says, we have this power, we should exercise this, we should, jurors should use the power that they have to help bring about a more balanced part of it. So this had been, nullification was something I had just spent a lot of time thinking about, and I read Paul's piece, and I thought that this is not a good idea. And so I sat down, and over the course of probably just a couple of weeks, I just wrote a response to it explaining why I thought this was a bad idea. And because it's a flammable topic, to say the least. It got some attention. Mostly Paul's piece got attention. He was on 60 Minutes and all that. And so, having written a response, he and I ended up doing a couple of radio shows and debates and things about this topic. So he's an awfully nice guy, and he thinks I'm crazy, and so.
No, I think you made a lot of sense, and you kind of have this way of logically kind of explaining things in simple terms. I mean, it's a short piece. It's really easy to read, really easy to understand. How do you deal with backlash?
I don't get a ton of backlash on stuff, mostly because I'm just not very interesting. Maybe not even within the academy, but certainly not outside the academy, right? I mean, the stuff I do on the federal rules of criminal procedure don't exactly send people to the barricades. But I mean, to the extent people are critical and, say, oh, this is this. A former colleague used to say, the only thing worse than being criticized is being ignored. So some of it just means, okay, you've sparked something. But look, I mean, we're scholars. I mean, we're not out there, making big policy changes with a stroke of a pen. So I haven't gotten a ton of backlash in my career, and to the extent I have,
That's great. That's a great approach, I think. I do appreciate when scholars do kind of stick their neck out and just say what they have to say.
Right.
As you said, we're scholars and we can talk about
this
stuff.
Is, that's how we make progress, is churning ideas of you pointing out where I've missed the boat. I point out why your response is not as good as you think it is because of this, and then somebody else joins in. That's how we make progress, is as long as everyone's operating in good faith, right?
Yes.
That we're really interested in solving problems as opposed to showing off or, getting our name in the paper or whatever it is, then it's all good. I mean, that's how this is supposed to work.
In another piece, you wrote quite a lot about the police. I believe it was published in 2021, where you said that police, they have two roles. One of the roles is to catch the perpetrators. The other one is to prevent crimes. So you put some emphasis on the clearance rates.
Yep.
So I have a question that I've been pondering, and I want to ask you. It's about surveillance, heavy surveillance in public.
Yep.
So some countries like China, Dubai have heavy surveillance, including facial recognition, in all public spaces, meaning they can increase their clearance rate.
Yep.
What do you think about that? Are you a fan?
I don't know. I mean, it's too complicated, I think, for a yes or no.
It is.
So, first of all, we can talk about China and Dubai. There are over 2,000 cameras on this campus surveilling places. And so the idea that, you know, what are they doing over there? I'm not saying it's as pervasive here as other places, only that we're already in a world, especially in a not fully self-contained world, but the university part, there's already a ton of surveillance. I only know the answer to the easy questions. The easy question is, does it bother me when I walk down Green Street on the U of I campus that there are video cameras that sort of know that I'm going from this building to this building? No, it doesn't. I mean, if the presence of the cameras deters people from purse snatching, mugging, stealing someone's bike, great. You know, I'm comfortable with that. The other easy question is, would I want it pointed at my house? And that's a coming
Absolutely
thing.
not.
But that's a coming thing, right? These so-called pole camera cases where the police put a surveillance camera on a public utility pole, right? So they're not trespassing anywhere. They put it on a telephone pole and they point it at my house. Now, all these cases say not into my house, but my driveway and my front door, right? So they can know when I leave, when I come home, when someone pulls into my driveway and stays for 2 minutes at 3 in the morning, and I come out and hand them something and they hand me something.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand the thinking, but am I happy? No.
Right.
And you're in law school, you know then that there's now an infinite number of hypotheticals we could come up with that sort of push me from the no and push me from the yes to figure out where. And that's what we do, right? That's our job as lawyers, as academics, and to sort of figure out how to reconcile my yes and my no.
Yeah.
But boy, I don't know the answer, and it's not even clear that knowing the answer will make any real difference. I mean, every every student walking down Green Street has a video camera on their phone.
Right.
Right? So the idea that I have some privacy interest in my public movement feels increasingly thin.
Yes, but it's still there.
But it's still there. I still
Everybody feels that.
I don't want a drone
Right.
flying around my backyard.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. There's just kind of, there's something like that repels people from all this
Yeah,
stuff.
when you're a highfalutin academic like me, you tend to call it the creepy factor. So surveillance has a creepy factor in it.
It has, yes, absolutely.
And our ability to find it is going to be pretty important.
I agree. A lot of civil procedure, the field leans on, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth Amendment. I wanted to ask you about the Fourth Amendment.
Okay.
More specifically about the fruits of the poisonous tree.
Okay.
Many times in law school, we hail the Fourth Amendment as the protector, right, of unreasonable searches and seizures, and I'm in that category as well. But let's go to the other side for a moment, and let's talk about a hypothetical for a second.
Okay.
A car driving down the road, a cop stops it, without reasonable suspicion, and then decides to check their trunk without probable cause,
Okay.
and finds a body in it.
Yep.
None of the exceptions apply, attenuation, good faith, inevitable discovery,
Okay.
nothing applies.
Yep.
Does the killer, and let's assume there are no other evidence besides that body to hook that person to the case. Does the killer just goes free?
Yes.
Yes.
I decided to be provocative in my answer.
Okay, yes.
The better answer is that evidence is inadmissible.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And so it doesn't mean that you now can't prosecute the driver
Correct.
for murder. It just means that evidence is inadmissible.
Correct.
And
What do you think about that? Isn't that crazy?
Things can be crazy in the moment that seem less crazy when we consider the alternatives, right? So if the alternative is the police can stop you when they want for no reason and search your car for no reason, and if they find something, tough. Maybe my mother might be comfortable with such a rule. She probably wouldn't, but I mean, she has nothing to worry about, right? But that's because the police aren't going to pull her over, right? The police aren't going to, increasingly, the police aren't going to pull me over the older I get. The police are going to pull over you because you're a young male, and young males are, a suspicious lot.
Yes.
If you're a person of color, they're going to pull you over twice as often, right? So doesn't that sound crazy? Answer, yes. Surely we don't want a world where the police are not restricted in any sense in how they go about getting into people's stuff. You use the car, but make it a briefcase, make it a house, right? Why is that any different than the police just decide, you know what? You look like you have something to hide.
Right.
I'm going to go into your house. And you say, no, that's terrible. We don't want to. The hard part is we haven't figured out a way to let the body and the trunk into evidence without undermining the rule that says the police can't come into your house. Because if there's no consequence to the police coming into your house because they'll feel like it, they'll do it, not randomly distributed across the population. And if we don't think that that's acceptable, we need some way to make the police pay a price. I'm very supportive of the police, so I don't mean to make it sound like, they're bad, but history has shown people with power need restraints, right? And so the police have power, and so far the best solution we've come up with is a narrow exclusionary rule. Narrow, right? Because as you said, there's a whole bunch of exceptions. There are a whole bunch of exceptions to it, but you nicely teed up the hypothetical where none of those exceptions apply. And at some point, if we're not willing to say, no, the body doesn't come into evidence, okay, I mean, I get it. I want the driver to go to jail for murdering the guy in the trunk too. But we need to have a conversation about what cost that comes to from those of us who don't want the police coming into our house. And reasonable people can differ and do differ on this. But at the moment, the line we've drawn is that subject to a whole bunch of exceptions, you can't get the body in.
This is why I love law school so much.
It's great,
because it's so fascinating. I can talk only about that little hypothetical for an entire night with friends.
Yeah.
Like only about that.
Yeah.
In 2009, you got an invitation from Chief Justice Roberts to serve on the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure Committee.
Yep,
How was that experience for you?
that was great. And it was great for the same reason that I like working with law students, that I like working in my old firm with the lawyers there. These were really capable people on this committee. It was a whole bunch of federal judges from across the country, a couple of people from the Justice Department, a couple of people from the Defense Bar, one academic, and you sit in a room. No one's ever heard of this committee outside of, legal types. And you try to figure out what's the right thing to do procedurally to make the system more fair, more accountable, easier to understand. And it was great. It was the kind of work I liked the most. No fanfare, no, press conferences. Just go to a room, and as the chair of the committee liked to say, check your ego at the door and sit down with really smart people and try to figure out what the right answer is to serious problems about how we should process, in this case, federal criminal cases. It was terrific. I enjoyed. I'm not generally a big committee fan, but then who is? But this was great. I mean, I very much enjoyed the people who were on the committee. I liked the work. Those did 6 years of that, and that was good.
It seems like you are comfortable in these environments where your decisions can influence pretty much the entire country. Did you ever think about being a judge?
Sure. When I was at my old law firm, and I was trying to figure out sort of what's next. I didn't think I wanted to practice law at a big law firm my whole career. I'm trying to think about what's next, and I tried to think of the things that I would find personally, rewarding. Being an academic was one. I thought, what about being a judge? In my flights of arrogance, assuming that I would have some opportunity to be a judge, is that something I would want to do? And I thought the answer was yes.
Okay.
I mean, that had the opportunity come along, I think I would have done it. Not, by the way, because I think I would enjoy it more than what I'm doing now, but because it'd be an immediacy to the contribution and a sense that if, for whatever reason, someone decided that I was the right person for the job, that's a responsibility, right? That's a duty. That's a responsibility that you have to do things like that if asked. So I thought about it, but I eventually thought, the chances of being in the right place at the right time were sufficiently remote that it just wasn't worth channeling my professional efforts toward that. But would I have done it? Sure. I mean, Justice Powell said no when he was asked to be a Supreme Court justice.
No way.
He did. He actually did twice.
No way.
He did. And he only said yes when President Richard Nixon called him personally and said, Lewis, I want
It's
you
time.
to. And no, he said, Lewis, it's your duty. And for Justice Powell, that was the magic word, because he said to his clerks, when the president asks you to do something for your country, you do it. And,
You seems to be driven by a sense of duty as well, from what I'm gauging.
I mean, sure. I mean, we're lucky, most of us, to be in situations that we're in, but we're only in these situations because other people have done so much to pave the way, to make it possible to do these things that, to be clear, no one's asked me to be a judge, but if they did, would I feel a sense of duty? Sure. I mean, even if I wouldn't like it, and I don't think I would like it as much as I like my current job, but, lots of people have done a lot of things that they weren't crazy about doing because it was their duty.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if you are convinced that it's your duty to do it, then you do it. Sure.
Are you ready for our rapid round?
Sure.
Ding, 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 ding. So this is going to be just rapid questions.
Okay.
And I just want to know what you think about some of these questions. So, number one, out of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, which do you believe provides the most protection and why?
6th, right to counsel. Everything else is secondary. Nothing about the rules we construct in the 4th and 5th Amendment go anywhere unless you have counsel, defense counsel, court-appointed counsel. Everything is based on the idea that we can make rules where the defendant's interest will be vindicated by a lawyer. And so right to counsel is crazy analogy, like the right to vote. You don't got that, you don't got anything else. So
Interesting.
Sixth
the 6th.
Amendment.
I thought you'd say the 5th for some reason. Like due process.
Well, actually, self-incrimination.
Right, self-incrimination.
Lots of stuff in that.
Yeah,
fifth.
it's fascinating. I like the 4th the most, by the way.
Okay.
Is 3 years of law school too long? Be honest.
No. Could you do it in 2.5 years? Sure. Could you do it in 2? Doesn't seem, just because of the way, I went through the system with 3. I don't think so. I mean, look, if you wanted to argue for 2.5, I'd say, yeah, 2.5's fine too. But there is, as you can appreciate, a maturing in your thinking.
Absolutely.
That comes in law school that's hard to replicate outside of law school. Once you're involved, once you're working, right, it's hard to duplicate the kind of thoughtful, okay, I got to learn something about this, I got to learn something about that. And I won't say that 3 years is the only right answer, but it seems like a good answer to me.
Mm-hmm. In a parallel universe, if you hadn't pursued law, what would you be doing?
Boy, I don't know. If I hadn't pursued law, my guess is I would probably be a history teacher.
Really?
Yeah.
You're still a teacher, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Calling to mind the old joke: if you can't do, teach. I mean, I like teaching. And I'm interested in history. I can't say I know that much about it, but if law had not been available to me, I might well have gotten more serious about history and then maybe been a history academic. But
should AI replace juries because it's a more efficient system that could actually take into account all the evidence?
No.
Why?
Because the suggestion is, from the question, that the role of the jury is to crunch information and reach some hypothetical correct outcome. Mm-hmm. I'll soften. AI is a long, long way from being able to make the kinds of judgments, right? Because juries don't just find facts. Juries also make judgments. Was it unreasonable for you to do what you did? Mm-hmm. Was it reckless? Did you actually perceive a risk that the gun was loaded? That's not a fact question. You can't just gather more information. It's a judgment that members of the community end up making about your behavior. And I can't get AI to accurately answer simple questions for me. So the idea that they're going to make judgments on human nature, maybe showing my age here, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Do you think we might get to that point?
Oh, I don't know. Anyone who thinks that they know where AI is going to take us is smarter than me or lying,
I'll
or
tell
both.
you, I wrote this question because I'm on the trial team, and
Yep.
and really what they teach us a lot is confidence, 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 the way you look, the way you speak, the way you
Yep.
behave. And I'm thinking, why should confidence matter at all? Like it should be based on the merits, and your confidence is not part of the merits. So that's why I was like, should AI discount confidence in your appearance and just judge it purely on the content?
Right, but the answer to that question lies in the it. Should they just judge it
Right.
on the it is not just, it's not a math problem, right? I mean, it's not a, if we knew this, this, and this, then we would get to this conclusion. Who do you believe? Do you believe, I was on a jury one time, and the question was, do you believe the alleged victim or do you believe the defendant? The case was nothing more than that, right? Just who do you find more credible? How's AI going to do that?
Have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I will not say it never will be able to do such a thing, but that's not a fact question. I mean, I guess it is a fact question, but it presupposes that the right answer is knowable. And I'm not sure more information would have led us to believe one more, that, okay, now we're 100% confident that this person is, believable and this person is not. Seems like we're asking a different question than what technology currently can help us with.
I agree. Once we colonize Mars, which country's criminal code should we adopt?
Criminal code. I don't want to be obviously dodging the question here, but do you mean what substantive laws or what procedure for processing cases, or both?
Both. And I
Both.
know you're a scholar in the U.S., but maybe you find some other countries that have something that we can learn, and then maybe if we go to Mars, we can implement some of these countries' substance procedures.
Yeah, I'm quite attracted to our procedural rules.
Me too.
I'm a little less enthusiastic about our substantive criminal laws, in part because I worry that there's been too much legislative kick the can down the road and just say, prosecutors, courts, just figure this out. We'll give you an enormous amount of power, not much guidance on what we're talking about. I don't know enough about other countries' substantive criminal laws to know whether the so-called code countries are better. And by better, I don't just mean more precise. I'll grant for the moment that they're more precise. But do they lead to more predictable, stable ordering of human affairs than ours do? That, I don't know, I'll ask AI. But I don't have a basis for saying that ours is better or not as good, because I just don't know enough about other countries' substantive laws.
So the College of Law has a lot of portraits of former professors in classrooms and the courtroom. Would you like to have your own portrait one day?
No. No.
No?
No.
You're too humble,
No.
Mr. Leipold. You're
No, humble I
You're
am
very
not.
humble.
Humble I am not, but no.
No, okay. It doesn't give you the kick that I think I would like to have a poster of me there. But
I'll suggest it. So.
What is the best legal movie or series, in your opinion?
Whew. I mean, we should probably take Law and Order off the board just because it is covered more, you know, in its 900 iterations. Somewhere in there, there's a lot of great criminal law and criminal procedure, but that feels cheating a little bit to just say that. My favorite television series that intersected with the criminal law is probably The Wire. I think it's the best show in the history of television.
The Wire.
The Wire.
I haven't watched it.
You should. HBO.
JP likes it too.
Yeah.
The studio manager.
Yeah,
He approves.
Good. Sensible people do.
Yeah, it's a in my view, fascinating look at policing, court systems, defense attorneys, drug dealers, prison systems. It's good stuff.
What is one thing people don't know about you?
I don't know.
Yeah, it is hard. I asked that myself, and I was like, I don't know.
I don't know what I don't know, or what they don't know. I don't even know what I don't know.
What type of food you like? Let's put that. What do you like to eat?
I'm a pizza kind
regular?
of guy. Yeah, I mean, I'm not terribly taken. I've never been terribly taken with food, and it a few years ago when I, like the rest of the world, got COVID, I found that I'd lost a lot of my sense of taste.
Still?
Yeah, it never fully came back, and so now food has even less interest to me. But
what do you do for fun?
well, I found that raising a couple of boys is kind of a full-time job on top of my full-time job. Now that they're adults, I like, my wife works very hard. I work all I want to. And my wife and I like spending time actually getting caught up on TV series that we haven't watched for the last 20 years while we were raising kids. So, yeah, we are not exciting people.
I think you are an excited person, personally. If you could take a sabbatical anywhere in the world, fully paid for, where would you go?
Whew. I'm not sure I would go to one place.
Okay.
There's lots of places in the world that I think would be really interesting to see because I haven't been that many places in the world. I would love to see, Russia, China. I'd love to see more of Mexico. I've only been sort of passing through there. Many, many countries in Europe. I'd like to see the Middle East. I mean, the historically significant cradle, right? There's practically no place that I wouldn't like to go. And like I say, my travel, especially over the last 20 years, has been so limited. I've got a lot of things to get caught up on.
Okay. We'll arrange that at some point. If you had to give a TED talk, but not about law, what would it be about?
I can't do law, huh?
No, sorry.
I don't know. It would probably, what's interested me a lot of late is the greatest generation. The World War II, Depression. What gives me comfort in our current tumultuous times is the fact that it's been worse.
Much worse.
Yeah. You think of the Civil War era, you think of the, World War II, Depression, communism, right? I mean, nuclear power, just...
Can't imagine.
There has been a lot there, and encouraging a focus. Actually, the Civil War would be an interesting talk. if I knew more about, you know, I know some, but certainly not an expert. Talking about those to make the current generations appreciate how much they sacrificed and they did what they had to do and were all the better for it. I'm reading a book now about actually the Eastern Front, as Americans call it, of World War II, the German invasion of Russia, Stalingrad, you know, all that period. It's awful. I mean, there's a level of carnage and suffering that just boggles the mind, that makes suffering is suffering. And, you know, I'm not saying one suffers more, but the scope of the suffering was so great then, and yet somehow the world came out on the other side without blowing itself up. It's pretty important, and I think pretty interesting.
So it's still history.
Still history, I guess, yeah.
For closing, looking back at all the years that you spent in academia and all the thousands of students that you taught, that you influenced, all these people that come back years later and say how much you influenced their career, what does it mean to you to have such positive influence on so many, you know, people?
You know, I'm not much on the sort of reflection stuff. Especially not, I mean, look, maybe when I retire, you know, I'll sit back and think, did you accomplish anything? You know, what people do when they reach milestones in their life, and they think back about, did I make the right choices and things like that. I don't do a lot of that. Obviously, it's very gratifying. I don't mean to sound, you know, sort of like I'm indifferent to it. I'm not at all. It's always incredibly, makes me happy when people say that I mattered to their professional development. It is the most rewarding thing someone in my position can have. In fact, my wife is also teaches at the university in the College of Nursing, and we talk about when a student says, you know, boy, you were really important, I wouldn't have made it through school if it weren't for you, kinds of things. We like to tell each other, this is how we get paid, right? I mean, this is our bonus, this is our benefit, this is why we do what we do. So I don't mean to suggest that it's not important to me, it is, but it just makes me happy that they feel like they are, you know, in a slightly better place. And, you know, we shouldn't overstate our place in the universe, but if they're in a slightly better place because we gave them an idea or just gave them a chance to vent in a moment of frustration or whatever it is, that's great. That's great. I mean, that's, I hope to do that. And so if I get some evidence that what I'm trying to do actually worked, great.
Awesome. Well, Professor Leipold, it was my true pleasure to
thank
have you here today.
Thank you. You're very kind, and I appreciate being asked to do this.
Yes, it was really nice to get to know you a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you.